It had been years since we saw Jeff. Ever since he failed out of college and moved back to the USA, my wife and I had been missing him. He was the funniest, most down-to-earth person we had ever met, and those qualities are hard to find in a stuck-up city like Vienna. When the plane touched down in Miami, we were excited for both the weather and our old friend. We instantly fell into each other's arms at the airport, and it felt like no time had passed at all. It seemed like he had had a rough few years. He had spent some time in jail, watched his grandparents die, and lived in his car, doing stand-up comedy on the road. He was beaming, though, as he handed us a flyer for a show the next night. "I've been headlining shows all over the South," he stated proudly, "and I'd be honored if you guys would come to the—" It seemed like he had had a rough few years. He had spent some time in jail, watched his grandparents die, and lived in his car, doing stand-up comedy on the road. He was beaming, though, as he handed us a flyer for a show the next night. "I've been headlining shows all over the South," he stated proudly, "and I'd be honored if you guys would come to this one. Of course, you probably already heard a lot of my jokes before, but you know how comedy is. Write what you know." And with that he took us back to his place. "You're going to love my girlfriend, Pate," he said. That's when the trouble started. My wife Tatiana put her heavy jacket back on. I thought it was odd at the time, but in retrospect, maybe she got chills from the name alone. As we walked into his one-bedroom apartment, he immediately yodeled, "My pizza, I'm home." A roar came from the bedroom. "Pizza." Pate came lumbering out of the room, a full 4'7", and at least 400 pounds of pure terror. Look, I'm not one to shame anyone for their appearance, but neither is my wife, and I had to literally cover her mouth to keep her from screaming. I don't know if that was out of politeness or self-preservation on my part, and I likely never will. Pate's eyes were about twice the size of normal human eyes, approaching an IM's size, and were pure obsidian black. Her grey, wispy hair stuck up out of her rock-like scalp like a troll doll that had been set on fire. Blue and purple veins twitched throughout her pale skin like worms in a Vietnamese spring roll. She had 7 fingers on each hand, but most disturbing of all were her index fingers, which were black, had at least 3 joints, and were more than twice as long as the others. Actually, that wasn't the most disturbing thing. The most disturbing thing was her swollen tongue, which lolled out of her mouth at least a few feet, well past her sagging, lactating breasts. All in all, she made the fat vampire hive lord from the original Blade movie look like a supermodel in comparison. Still, this was the girlfriend of one of my very best friends. I went in for a hug and kiss on the cheek. We're touchy people, it would be weird if I didn't. Immediately I could feel the unnatural heat radiating from her tongue, but I wasn't ready for the corpse-like frost of my lips on her cheek. Surprisingly, she smelled incredibly nice, like lilacs, old books, and dill pickles. Maybe Jeff was just into her for her smell. It was weirdly intoxicating. "We have snacks," Jeff chimed in airily as the rest of us fought to catch our breath and act normal. Even Pate, I could tell, was holding something back. Deep in her black eyes, I recognized the look of a person, doing all they could to contain some deeper emotion. "Don't let it be hunger," I kept saying to myself. "Please don't let it be hunger." Jeff pulled up a seat with beers and a bowl of flaming hot Cheetos and said, "Have you seen Sam Morrill's new special, On the Rooftops? It's amazing." And so we settled in with a beer to watch a comedy special, just like old times. Except in old times there wasn't a 2-meter-long anteater tongue slowly working its way around the Cheetos, and an unnaturally long and skinny finger slowly, rhythmically tapping on the hardwood coffee table every time the audience laughed. At one point Pate asked if I wanted a massage. It took me a minute to understand what she was saying what with the tongue, and everything but the second she got up and started moving her 14 fingers towards me, I just instinctively started saying, "No." "Pate, Curtis is a married man," Jeff said. "I'm so sorry guys. We've been living that swinger lifestyle for a little minute. She can get antsy, you know." Tatiana and I exchanged a startled glance that I can only describe as suggesting multiple people are fucking that thing. Another hour passed discussing our old adventures in Austria. The time we did mushrooms and encountered a guy playing the accordion with a lifelike zebra mask. Yes, he was real, and he tried to rob us. The time we all got stuck in a broken down subway with no lights and a mariachi band. The time we went to a music festival and took so much acid that I started thinking about how to make friends with a priest. As we talked about all of our old drug war stories, I started to think that maybe I was just hallucinating the monstrosity panting directly to my left. But then I would feel the moist heat radiating from her tongue, and feel the hackles of my stomach raise like a horny cat. Occasionally, Jeff would express his love for pate, and she would hiss back, "My pizza," and pull out one of her hairy, veiny boobs for him to pet. In retrospect, I think that may have been the most disturbing part. Certainly top 3. On the way to our hotel in the rental car, it took a few Led Zeppelin songs on the late night, get the let out station before either of us could formulate a coherent sentence. "She seems nice," I said. "Jeff has never been shallow, and you shut the fuck up right now," Taddy said. "You shut the fuck up immediately." Clearly she was just as disturbed as I was. "Look," I said, "maybe she's just really into extreme body modification. Like, extreme shit." "Did you see that fucking thing?" Tatiana exclaimed. "That was not human. I've been in robotics for years, Curtis, and I can tell you with some certainty that we are decades away from prosthetic fingers that move like that. Why would you even want that? And that tongue?" Gene Simmons, I interjected with a dead stare and flat effect, the universal indicator of, yes, even I know that I'm wrong. "Fuck you, Curtis, there's not that much tongue in any human mouth. Not in 2 human mouths." "Well, he seems happy," I said. "Yeah, well, guess what, Curtis, Jeff is a fucking idiot." She snapped back, "You and I both know that. He's great and funny and sweet and all, but that thing will fucking eat him, and you know it." Finally ready to acknowledge reality, I took a deep breath and said, "What do you think it evolved those crazy ass fingers for? Do you think it taps on little kids' windows to lure them out at night? It would explain the black eyes. I bet it has great night vision." That squat frame and hissing voice make me wonder if maybe it could be some kind of Filipino cryptid that might lure you into the woods and... Curtis, this is why I told you to shut the fuck up. Did I mention that I'm an evolutionary psychologist? So the next day we went to the Coral Castle. Look it up, it's a gigantic castle made of coral made by a schizophrenic man over 30 years. That's about the size of the Taj Mahal in Miami. And then to Jeff's headlining comedy show. We saw Pate haunting the front row, but since Jeff was seated with the other comics in the back, we had no incentive to sit with her, or, for that matter, to let her know we were there at all. As we watched her drool all over the people around her, I couldn't help but ask Taddy, "Do you think everyone else just doesn't see her? You know, like we do?" Tatiana scoffed. "Either that or they're just too polite to say anything. There's an epidemic of political correctness in your home country, my dear Gertrude, and it's going to get you all killed." I rolled my eyes. "Taddy, I don't think whatever that thing is qualifies as any kind of protected class. Also, you're talking like a damn fascist again. Will you listen to yourself? Political correctness is going to get you all killed. Let me tell you what gets people killed, Taddy. When people start singling people out and turning against their own class. When people..." "Shush," she squealed. Those comically large black lobster eyes were focused on us, and bigger than before. It seemed the entire audience had frozen, and nothing in the comedy club moved, except for the lights on the stage and Pate's heaving tongue. Her face was exactly 180 degrees from her body, and she was glaring directly at us. Hot as it was in the theater, I could see steam coming off of her tongue. I put my hand on Tatiana's arm. I could feel every hair on it stand up, and I tried to pat it back down like an angry cat. Just as much to soothe myself as to soothe her. There was no doubt that Pate saw us as prey. The question was, what was going on in everyone else's heads? In that moment, everyone else in the packed house seemed to be mannequins, staring straight ahead. I was about to get out of my seat and kick some ass, is what I tell myself, when Jeff finally came on stage to thunderous applause, and Pate slowly faced forward, if you could call that a face. Some of his jokes were absolutely bizarre. I don't remember them exactly, but one of them was definitely about how inconvenient it is when you have to pull half-digested cats out of your girlfriend's esophagus. The audience ate it up. Part of me wanted to say, well, I guess this is just Miami. Standing. Fucking. Ovation. In that moment I knew we had to get out of there. I could feel the sweat pouring down my face, and no amount of calm breathing or metacognition could convince me it was just stress and the Miami heat. But then I saw Tatiana crying and feeling her neck. "Curtis, we have to go," she said. "I think I have tics." Again, Pate swiveled around to gawk at us, as if on cue. And this time, so did roughly 1/3 of the audience. All smiles. Not big, unnatural smiles, just small human, slightly amused smiles. And then they turned back around. But in its own way, that was freakier. And so we ran. And we ran to our car, which was full of ticks. So we ran back to our hotel, which took an hour, but at least we could sleep. We did not sleep. The next morning I called Jeff and demanded to know what was going on with the ticks. Yeah, I know it's not my best joke, but I'm working on it, he said. But how did you like the rest of the show? Do you think I'm improving? Man, why the fuck was my car full of ticks last night? That cannot be a coincidence. Also, I'm sorry, but I think your girlfriend might be a literal demon. I could hear him audibly sigh. Looking back, I may have been too forward. Man, I was so looking forward to seeing you, he said. You're like a brother to me. I would never put ticks in your car. But please do not talk about Pate in that way. Man, what the fuck kind of name is Pate? And your comedy is fine, but just please admit that it's weird as fuck that you have to pull dead cats out of her throat. Admit that and then we're on our way to being good again. It sounded like he was about to cry now. I tried to prevent this, man. I did this all for you. Just promise you won't answer your door, okay? No matter what. And he hung up. Tatiana was taking a shower, and I was trying to make coffee in the shitty American coffee maker the hotel provided for us. I was mulling over what Jeff had said when I heard something at the door that made my bones feel like they had stepped on G.I. Joes in the sand. As if something or someone was trying to eat our hotel room doorknob like hot soup. And then, the rhythmic tapping of one long finger with too many joints. Tatiana came out in a bathrobe and went to open the door. No, I shouted, it's Pate. She turned to me, blood drained from her face, and said, then this door may not be opened. I will say, I'm getting weirdly horny. I doubt Teddy is down, since I can still hear her crying, but the more I think about it, some demon tongue wrapped around my dick, while I play with some pale saggy, hairy, veiny boobs is starting to sound really nice, actually.